What is up, YouTube, and welcome back to another video on high altitude investing. In today's video, we are going to be talking about Litecoin in the bigger picture as well as the smaller time frames. Super excited about today's video. There's a lot of reasons to be bullish on this coin. So without further ado, let's get straight into today's video. All right, so we're starting off here in the bigger picture, and as you can see, I have Litecoin over here on the left and NVIDIA over here on the right. And we're basically looking at the big picture accumulation structure that happened on NVIDIA before NVIDIA went parabolic and straight to the moon. So as you can see, there was a multi-year accumulation here on NVIDIA starting in the 2000s, going all the way until 2015 before it really started to pick up and go vertical, with some pretty big pumps and dumps along the way. This is pretty typical for a big picture accumulation structure. A lot of times they'll look something like this, and then they'll break out, or they'll even look like this, and then they'll break out like that. So there's different structures that can happen in the market when they're doing these big picture accumulations. But the fact of the matter is that big picture accumulation represents big institutions buying a bunch of that stock or that coin or whatever you're trading in preparation for a big bull market, and that's exactly what we see here with NVIDIA. Now, it did make a bit of a triangle here. Once it broke bullish out of that triangle, obviously NVIDIA just went straight to the moon. And in fact, if you look at the stock right here, the price of NVIDIA has continued to go up all throughout this whole period of time and is still climbing, still increasing in value to this day. So these big picture accumulations can be very powerful. Now, obviously, we don't know exactly how high Litecoin is going to go once it starts to break out, but I do think we will get a big vertical breakout in the same way that we did here with NVIDIA. It's just a matter of seeing how far it's going to go, what extension it will hit, and how high it goes after it does start to break above its old all-time high. But looking at Litecoin over here on the left, we do see very similar structure to NVIDIA, with a big pump in 2017, followed by a correction, and a big pump in 2021, followed by a correction. This really is the same type of accumulation structure that NVIDIA did before it went to the moon. So here on the big picture for Litecoin, we have a lot of reasons to be very bullish on this coin, especially when we break above this triangle pattern that we're forming down here. As you can see, we do have a very nice triangle on Litecoin, just like what happened to NVIDIA over here. Once we can get above the resistance of this triangle at around $111, that would be the green light go for Litecoin and take us all the way to the moon. And I believe we'll very easily break above our old all-time high over here at around $416 per Litecoin. So when this breakout starts to happen, it's going to be very exciting. A lot of people will be afraid to buy. This is the thing that happens with markets. People are too afraid to buy the dip. They're too afraid to buy during the accumulation phase. Then once the market starts to take off, it just runs away from them. They're still too afraid to buy because they're trying to call a top the whole way up until the market has obviously blown everybody away. And then a lot of times they start to buy and it's too late. And this is why the market favors people that are willing to take risk, people that are willing to buy when other people are fearful, when other people are skeptical, because you're able to get in before the market just starts to go vertical and then nobody wants to touch it. I mean, look at Zcash. The same thing is happening with Zcash, even though I think Zcash is going to keep going higher. Nobody wants to buy it up here because of the fact that it pumped so hard, they're too afraid to buy a top. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of times in these markets, you'll get these big breakouts and they'll keep going up and up and up and up. And if you study pretty much any market in the world, you're going to get a very clear understanding of the way uptrends work. Uptrends are your friend. Once you start a big uptrend, it's more likely that that market is going to continue higher than that market is going to top out. In fact, the probability of calling a top in the market is not in your favor. So this is why it's so smart to buy in early and let those coins or those stocks or whatever you're holding ride. Just let your winners ride. Let it keep going higher and higher and higher and higher, because eventually it will top out, but you can make a lot of money along the way up. Even just looking at the Dow Jones over here, look how high this thing has gone since the Great Depression here in 1929 when we topped out here. Look how high the Dow Jones has gone. Imagine how many people tried to call the top on this thing over and over and over again, and it just keeps going higher. It's probably going to go for another big swing before it sees a big correction. So this just goes to show how powerful the trend is and why you want to get in early and let your winners ride. This is the nature of markets. If you can buy in early when people are skeptical, like I said, when it's undervalued, when people are afraid to buy, that is the best possible time to be picking up that stock or that crypto or whatever you're trading. And in the case of Litecoin, I believe we're starting a big picture trend here soon. It's going to be very, very, very big, very vertical, and it'll probably go higher than most people expect. So if you get in now early on, then you can ride that trend. But if you wait, it gets scary to buy tops. People are afraid to buy the top. So psychologically, most people are not willing to put money into the market when it's going up, because they're too afraid to buy the top, which, you want to be careful not to buy top, so it's an understandable emotion. But if you don't understand the context of the cycle, you can still ape into something that looks like it's gone really high, like Zcash, and still make 300, 400, 500% on the movement that comes afterwards. So this just goes to show how powerful these uptrends really are. So let's check out Litecoin in the smaller picture. You guys kind of get the idea. I'm expecting a big breakout above the old all-time high in the bigger picture. Once that trend starts, it's probably going to go higher than most people expect. Most people will try to call a top the whole way up, just like they've been doing with Bitcoin. And this is the nature of human psychology. So make sure you get in early so you're not one of those people that has to buy late, has to buy high, and then it's scarier too. And make sure you get in early so you make the biggest percentage gain as well. So let's check out Litecoin on the smaller time frames. Let's drop down to the daily. Here on the daily candlesticks, you can see we are finding support down here. In the short term, we're starting to see some reaction off of this support level on Litecoin, which is a good sign because a lot of people were freaking out expecting a big crash right here. Of course, because anytime the market pulls back, everybody freaks out. It's so funny to see over and over again. But down at these levels, Litecoin is really undervalued both in the short term and in the bigger picture. And if we turn our indicators on, you can see that we're oversold on the RSI on the daily. When we look at the net positions indicator, which tells us retail versus institutional accumulation, you can see that institutional money is buying and not retail right now, which is a really good sign. You always want institutions to be buying. Big institutions buy at the bottoms, retail buys at the top. So whenever you see big institutional money coming in, like we see with the net positions indicator here, that tells you that this is very likely a local bottom because the institutions are buying in and not the retail money. And you can start to see how us being oversold, us having institutional money coming in, the triangle pattern that we were looking at earlier, all of those things are telling us, hey, Litecoin is very likely going to see a strong reaction off of this lower support level. And if it does, and if it breaks above the resistance here, that's green light go for the big picture bull market that we were just looking at, where we're going to make a lot of money on this coin. It's going to be very fun, very profitable, and very exciting. So keep an eye on this triangle on the daily candlesticks. Another thing that you can see here on the daily, if we're zoomed in a little bit more, we still see a classic ABC correction here on Litecoin, A, B, and C, followed by sideways accumulation with inside of a range. So we have a bit of a range right here. We did break bullish out of that range slightly, came back down into the range, and now we're just consolidating inside of this horizontal range, very similar to what happened to Bitcoin in 2015 as Bitcoin was bottoming out early on in one of its early cycles. So if we look at Bitcoin here, you can see Bitcoin did a very similar kind of thing here in 2015, with a big ABC correction on Bitcoin with sideways accumulation like we see right here, a bit of a breakout above that accumulation, a triangle pattern as well, just like what we're seeing on Litecoin right now. And then Bitcoin started this big picture uptrend that did go way higher than most people thought. Everybody tried to call the top the whole way up. I rode this whole trend, so I know. They tried to call the top here, literally the whole way up, especially right here at 7K. They tried to call the top, and it went all the way to 20K, and that was finally the top in the market, at least the short-term top, because by the way, Bitcoin is still uptrending to this day. And this goes to show that the trend is your friend, and why professionals will teach you to let your winners ride. And if there's demand for something, if there's real world value in an asset, and that demand isn't going anywhere, that trend is your friend. No matter how big the short-term corrections are along the way up, that trend is going to be your friend, and you're going to keep going higher and higher and higher. So that's the same thing here with Litecoin. We're just starting the early signs of one of those big picture trends. Bitcoin shows you how powerful these trends can be. The altcoins have been held back. They're really ready to explode. Now that retail thinks they're not going to, the big institutions are positioned and ready, especially since the big institutions made it look like they sold, just like they do in the stock market. You have to understand, you guys, with crypto right now, big money is here. They're playing this market. They're playing you guys like fools. They're playing this market just like they play the stock market. Everybody panicked, sold all their stocks during 2020, during COVID. Why? Because it seemed impossible that the stock market was going to recover. A lot of people thought it was going to go down, thought it was going to go lower, global pandemic hitting. So you have to understand, the big money is always going to make it look like through news articles, through whatever fundamental reason, that the market cannot recover. And that's the same thing that they're doing with crypto now. The big institutions are in crypto. Of course, they're posting all these negative articles. Look, all the big money is selling. But if you look at actual data, institutional money is coming into these markets, not out. Even on Bitcoin, if we go over to Bitcoin right here, if you check out Bitcoin, right now we have more institutional buying than we did down here at 75K or even down here at 50K. The last time we've seen this much institutional accumulation on Bitcoin was pretty much down here at 17K after the FTX crash, which was another perfect example of the market crashing, everybody believing it was done, that the market was done for, it was going to go lower, but big institutions were picking it up. There was tons of negative news articles, tons of bad stuff about crypto, but the big institutions were buying. You can see down here in the red. They're buying again right now. And so now that all the retail money thinks that the market's going to go down, there's all these negative news articles and stuff, like there always is at local bottoms. The big institutions, they're playing you guys like fools. They make you guys think that this market is just going to go lower. Fact of the matter is, this market is being bought by big institutions. No matter what you're reading about BlackRock and Grayscale and all that stuff, no matter what news articles you're reading, the truth of the matter is big institutions are buying in to these markets right now. No matter what they want you to believe, they're buying in. And the fact of the matter is that as this market starts to break out, you're going to see the fruition of all that institutional money. Now that retail is, again, getting played like a fool, they think it's going to go lower. Now the market has plenty of opportunity to pump here. Now, if we pull up the 4-hour time frame for Litecoin and zoom in a little bit here on the 4-hour time frame, let's take a look here. You can see what we're starting to come up off this oversold conditions on the RSI, starting to see some strength right here. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see a vertical break off of these lows and a move very similar to this right here, but in the opposite direction. Because this was really just a liquidity grab to shake people that were too leveraged long, grab all their liquidity, make them all bearish, and now the market can recover and start to go up like it's been set up to do for quite some time. So that's my view on Litecoin in the short term and the big picture. In the big picture, we have very big opportunities for a big vertical move, a big breakout, very similar to like what happened on NVIDIA. And in the short term, we're extremely oversold, undervalued, and ready for a big reversal here in the short term as well. So that's my update on Litecoin. Thank you guys for tuning in. I do have a Black Friday sale running at least until the end of Friday. So there's only 2 days left. Make sure you guys click in the description box below to get 50% off on all VIP products. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, share it with your friends. I love you guys. I appreciate you. And I look forward to seeing you guys in future videos. And as always, stay profitable out there.